we're going to be talking about OpenRefine. OpenRefine is a tool for working with messy data. It's an open source tool. It has an active development community around it with people creating extensions. It's got an active discussion list, lots of documentation you can find online, lots of other training sessions and tutorials. We're going to provide some resources at the end that you can use to continue exploring this, but there's tons more out there for sure. And interestingly, OpenRefine, it runs in a browser when you open it, but the data isn't actually leaving your machine, it just runs in the browser. So that's something that's kind of confusing at the beginning. So things you might use Refine for. This is some of the more basic stuff, and like I said a little bit, Liz is going to walk you through some of these functions. Refine does a lot more too, but today we're going to just get our feet wet with it. And I'll come back after her demo and talk a little bit more about some of the more advanced possibilities that you can explore. But this is some of the stuff that you would use Refine for. This kind of data, stuff that's in a simple tabular format, that's inconsistently formatted, and that has inconsistent terminology, among other things. So what Refine does is it allows you to get an overview of your data set, which is especially useful for very large sets of data. You can resolve inconsistencies, you can split data up. I'm just going to read this slide pretty much. You can match local data up with other data sets, and you can enhance data using other resources, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So here's I went to watched a webinar just a couple weeks ago, and this was a slide. It was talking about metadata aggregation on a pretty large scale, but this was an example of how this project is using OpenRefine as one step in its workflow to normalize their data in preparation to aggregate it. This is at the South Carolina Digital Library, and they're just outlining what the steps are that they go through in this one part of their larger project. So it's a handy tool to use. Here's what kinds of things you can do with it and what they would look like. So here you can see in this first column a long address, and maybe you want to split that up so that you can sort on each part of that address or focus on each part of that information separately. You can split it out here into multiple columns. Here's some other stuff. If you wanted to normalize your metadata, you've got all these crazy dates here, and you can normalize them all to match whatever you're using. You can also do this wonderful thing called faceting, and it helps you get an overview of your data at a glance. You can quickly see here some inconsistencies in data, right? People use multiple ways to describe the same thing, and you can see here how often and what some of the more apparent entries that you're going to want to go ahead and focus on and normalize it if, in fact, that's what you're doing. So this is a screenshot from the actual product, and you'll see Liz do this live in action pretty soon. But this is my favorite thing that Refine does, and it's called clustering. And basically, here's a little bit bigger view of that so you can see it better. But basically, Refine groups your data according to a number of different factors that you can adjust, and it groups what it thinks is similar so that you can review and modify and fact your data. So faceting and clustering are by far the two functions that I use for manipulating large sets of metadata about collections, which is generally what I would use it for. when you hear people talk about Refine, you'll hear all of these names used for this tool. Nobody really calls it Freebase GridWorks anymore. That's a legacy name, but that's what it originally said. But the other three are all real common. Google originally developed Refine, but then it abandoned the project a few years ago, and it became an open source community-supported project. And so now the name is OpenRefine. Lots of folks, myself included, take the lazy approach and just call it Refine. So if you hear any of those things, it's the same thing. So if you are thinking of using Refine, first you're going to want to step back and examine your data and see what tool, whether Refine is the appropriate tool. There are a number of tools out there that can help you manipulate and normalize data sets in a variety of different ways. So how do you know which one is right for you? Well, first you need to ask yourself some questions about your data. Type of data that you have and what format it's in. You'll need to know the size of your data set. OpenRefine, like I said before, works especially well on very, very large sets. Consider what questions you want to ask of your data and what steps you need to go through to find the answer. So here's a simple matrix that can help guide your tool selection. It's not comprehensive, and there are definitely more tools out there, and all of these tools do more than these brief descriptions imply. For example, Google Fusion tables can be used to geocode location information and automatically generate maps, stuff like that. But these are the most common tools, and this gives you an idea of what to expect from each of them. So there's different levels of ease of use. If you already know how to learn to write code, well, maybe that's really easy for you. But if that's not something you're interested in, these other tools make manipulating your data a little easier for the end user. Okay, so Liz is going to do a live demo for you guys now, and I am going to hand it over to her.
Hello, everyone. This is Liz. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Thanks to everyone who was chatting with me just now about audio issues. I think maybe a few people are still having audio issues, but viewer 18 and viewer 50 just had some excellent advice. Please, everyone, make sure that when you click the phone icon in the Join Me app, click the Connect by Computer to actually connect to the audio. And also, viewer 18 said that they disconnected and reconnected and now can hear the audio. So if you're still having issues, please do that. All right. We will be posting this. Right now, we will be posting this online. We may be re-recording some of the sound. So hopefully it will be even clearer training webcast. As you'll see, I've been doing some research into how to make this better. But I'm going to go ahead and start the walkthrough now. So I will leave it up to Jen to answer questions in chat. All right, and Jen and everyone, can you hear me okay? I won't wait for confirmation. Yes. Okay, yes. Good. All right. Okay, so hello, I'm Liz Grumbach. I'm coming to you initiative for Digital Humanities, Media, and Culture at Texas A&M University. And Jen introduced me really nice, so I won't say anything else about myself. Today, I'm going to be taking you through a basic walkthrough of this tool. Now, OpenRefine is meant to be used as part of the processing workflow. However, that's not to say it can produce a finished product. Sometimes Refine can do everything you need, but sometimes it can't. The key to using OpenRefine is to identify characteristics and then figure out which function in the tool will allow you to change those common characteristics. So today, I'm going to look at the basic functionalities of OpenRefine and then identify, analyze, and refine using two powerful OpenRefine functions, facets and clusters. Now, in order to do this, I set up a little project for us. I downloaded information for data services. And right now I'm on our TXDHC blog post because I'm going to actually come right here and download that data set. And click this. Now, these are new records released the beginning of this month from the British National Bibliography. So I clicked on this link to download, and I'm going to actually go to my downloads folder. I'm on a Mac, and drag this to my desktop. You don't really need to do this. It's just, I'm just doing it for ease of access for myself. Now, what I'm interested in these records is actually the Dublin core elements used to describe each record, because that's what I really want to work with and analyze. The end goal of this project is not to export in RDF, but to export some sort of spreadsheet for further analysis and discussion with my colleagues. In this walkthrough then, what is going to be produced by OpenRefine isn't necessarily a finished product, especially since we're not going to have time to do everything necessary to collect the data. So I'm going to go to my applications folder, and I'm going to open Google Refine now. That is actually going to open in your web browser. So if you don't see this or start up OpenRefine, if you know this address, you can actually open a new tab in your web browser and paste it in, and it will take you directly to your dashboard. You're working offline, but you're working in a web browser. There are numerous options in Google Refine. One of the things that will show up first is to open an existing project. And you see here that I have a few things that I've been working on in OpenRefine. Here you can rename a project if you want to rename a project before you start working on it again, or you can delete a project. Just this. And then it's permanently deleted. You can also import an existing Google Refine project file. If you're collaborating with someone and they send you a Google Refine project file that they've been working on, you can choose a file from your desktop, rename that file, and then import project. And then maybe export it to send it back to your colleague. It's Google Refine, OpenRefine's way of trying to make the tool more collaborative. What we're going to do today, though, is actually create a project from scratch. This is the first time I've ever worked with this data in OpenRefine, presumably. And so I'm going to choose files from my local computer. There are a number of other ways to get data into OpenRefine and create a project, however. If you have a URL or a web address pointing to the data, you can copy it here, and then you can actually also add another URL and upload multiple data. You can actually copy and paste directly into this text box to upload data, or you can link this to a Google spreadsheet, and it will authenticate that Google spreadsheet based on your Google or Gmail account. What we're going to do today, though, is choose a file. I know on my desktop because I just put it there. So I'm going to choose this env rdf.rdf file. Upload it. So Google Refine or OpenRefine try to auto-parse the data for you and give you a little preview here. If you don't see anything here, it's because it actually tried to parse the data in the wrong way. And I wanted to show you what that looks like. So if you don't see a preview, you actually might want to click through these available data parsing formats that Google Refine gives you. So it's not recognizing it as an RDF file, so maybe it will recognize it as an XML file, and that is definitely true. It will ask you to click on the first record to load, and then what Google Refine will do from there is actually auto-load the rest of the records. So if I didn't know what the first record was, or if I just wanted a subset of the data that I'm uploading, like for example, DC title, I could click on DC title and it will give me another preview before it automatically loads the rest of the records. Now I know that I actually want to work with the whole record, not just this subset. So I'm going to pick another record element by clicking this button here and go back to my first preview. Now, I happen to know that this first record is right here, so I'm just going to scroll down a little bit and make sure that I'm right and it's not highlighting the entire file, and it looks like I am right. This highlight function is actually really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it will update my preview. So here's where you should review to make sure that the chosen record has all the information that you're interested in, that OpenRefine hasn't parsing incorrectly, or your data file is corrupt in some way. And if I scroll through, I can see that, well, I'm interested in DC term subject, so that's perfect. I'm interested in DC type, DC description, so I think that this has just about everything that I want. I'm going to go ahead and rename the project name to something like BNB February. I'm going to go ahead and click Create Project. Depending on your file size, this could take a very little time or a very long time to load in all of the columns and rows. So the first thing that I see here is that I'm in records view, and I have about 14,500 records. The reason that is the way that the numbering of these rows is done. Also, you'll see that my first record is number 1, second record is number 2, and my third record is the number of rows, but it's still one record, alternating gray, white, and gray colors. I can switch over to a rows view if I want to, and this is just a way to delineate or separate out your data set if you want to work on individual stuff instead of the entire record. I'm actually going to start working in rows for now, and I'll switch to records when I want to work on how the data for each record will be displayed in report. So the second thing I really want to do in here is I want to organize this data in OpenRefine in a way that makes sense to me. So what I want to do first is find what my marker is. So this could be a URI, a unique resource identifier, a unique ID in some way, the title or a unique value that I think is in my data set. I know that my unique ID that I want to work with is actually the title. So if I hover over this column right here, DC terms title is what would be my record marker. I want to organize my data by putting this column first. So I could go to edit column and move column to beginning. There are a couple of other options here. If I want to move it left, right, or to the end, I can do that too. But I'm actually not going to do that right now because I want to show you one of the greatest little tricks that OpenRefine has to organize data. If I go all the way back to the first column in OpenRefine and click on the menu for the all column and go to edit columns and then reorg/remove columns and click that, a really helpful pop-up comes up. What I can do here is if I'm not interested in any of this data, I can just come over to drop columns to remove it. I actually am interested in that data, however. I do know that I want to reorder this as much as possible. For instance, I want DC terms title, my record marker, to be right top. I know that there are a couple of other things that I'm interested in working in, though, so I'm going to go ahead and bring those up in the column list. The second one I mentioned earlier that I'm interested in DC subject. So I know that this right here is going to be really helpful to me. I also know that DC terms description is something I want to work with. So I'm going to move that up. I want to eventually look at the language codes. And so I'm going to go ahead and move this up. DC terms language with the RDFS label value, and also the definition of that value that's in this column. A couple more things that I'm going to be interested in using for this webinar. I want to try to find the publication place and the publication date. And I happen to know, because I know this data set, that this is publication place. So I'm going to move this up. And publication date is actually DC terms issued. So I'm going to go ahead and find that and move that up as well. So I've really kind of organized to the best of my ability how I want the first couple of columns to work as I work with this. What I would probably do if we had more time is go through all of these and analyze them and remove the things I'm not interested in. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And OpenRefine is going to automatically reorder those columns for me. I'm not done organizing yet, however, because I realized that this column right here for DC title, my record marker, isn't in any sort of order at all. So I want to sort that in some way. So I'm going to click on the column menu, go to sort, and click sort, and a pop-up is going to come up right here. I know that all of my stuff are text, so I'm going to go ahead and choose text. I'm going to leave these options, position blanks and errors, just like this. It's very helpful sometimes to have your errors first so that you can correct them. And I know I'm going to go ahead and say I want it in alphabetical order and click OK. Now, issues here, quotation marks instead of A's and etc. I probably go through and change those in some way at the date, but for right now, this is good enough. I noticed when I sorted that, however, that this sort menu item popped up in this bar. So click that and look at my options. I could remove sort from here. I can do some more functions right here, or I could reorder the rows permanently. And that's exactly what I want to do, because what I'm doing right now is organizing data sets so that I can work with it more. So I'm going to go ahead and click reorder rows permanently. And it's done that for me. If I pop over to the record view now, what I see is all of my records in alphabetical order, with the first columns being columns that I want to work with and refine. So now I'm just about as organized as I'm going to get. But I noticed that there are some things that are in these first columns that I'm not sure I want to work with anymore. For instance, this DC terms subject schema authority definition column. So I want to go ahead and remove it. I'm going to go ahead and delete it. If I click on the menu and I go to edit column, I can just remove the column right here. There are other options as well. You can rename the column, you can add columns and etc. But I'm going to go ahead and remove it. And then immediately once I do that, I realize that I didn't want to do that and I'm panicking. And I don't come up here in time, and I don't click undo right away, and that disappears. And I don't know how to step back. If I go over to the left side of OpenRefine and click redo, this is how you step back in OpenRefine. And highlighted right here is the latest change that I made. It's the view that I have right now. So I want to step back to the second thing that I ever did after I created the project. And once I do that, what you'll notice is that deleted column shows back up, which is exactly what I wanted. One of the important things to know about the undo is that you can't pick and choose which undo or redo you want. You can only step backwards or forwards. So I could go all the way back to create project, but I couldn't have both create project and column. If you have any questions about that, I think Jen would be very happy to answer them in the chat box. So now I'm completely organized and I'm ready to start working with my data. The first thing I notice is that I have two columns for DC language, this one that has the value codes, and a second one that points to the authority list for those vocabulary codes. What I really want is to combine this data in some way, but I don't want to just bring this link over to this cell right here. I want them to be in the same column, but I want them to be in separate rows within my records. So what I do is I come to this first column that I want to change. I go to transpose, because what I'm going to be doing is transposing, and I'm going to be transposing cells across columns, across two columns, into rows. So I'm going to go ahead and click this option. It will automatically decide that that first column that I chose the menu for is where I want to go from, and then I have to choose where I want to go to. Now I know from working with this data that it's really this description right here. This is the language term that I want to combine. I don't want to transpose into two columns, however. The way I describe this is that I want the information to be in separate rows, but in one column. So I'm actually going to choose one column and then rename my column DC terms language. There are a lot of interesting options here as well that I would really encourage you to explore. They're all very helpful. For now, I'm just going to ignore the blank cells and click transpose. What that will do for me is it will automatically do exactly what I wanted to do, which was combine that information in some way without putting it all into the same cell. Now I have a new column here, DC terms language, with the value code in one cell, and right below it, the vocabulary authority list link. So that is combining information in some way. But what if I wanted to separate information in a column within a record? That's called splitting multi-valued cells in OpenRefine. And I'm actually going to take a look at this column right here, which is the DC terms subject column that has all of my subject terms values in it. And as I scroll through, I notice that things like paratuberculosis and prevention are together, which might be helpful if I'm checking this against an authority list. But for right now, I'm actually going to do an analysis on this data. So I want everything to be split up into as many different parts as it can possibly be. So I'm going to come up, click the menu for this column, and go to Edit Cells and split multi-valued cells. It will see that the separator is a comma separator. That's the most common separator. But I know actually that it is two hyphens looking at my data. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And what that will do is it will split all of the multi-valued cells in that column. And I'm just going to make my font a little bigger so that we can see in this record now, I have all of these separate values in separate rows. And here's my second record with all of the separate values. That's exactly what I wanted. That's splitting multi-valued cells, but there's also a way to join multi-valued cells in a record. So I notice in this second record that I have right here, that I have in my description column, two rows, one forthcoming publication, one originally published. This information joined together, which is a little contrary to what I wanted to do before, what I said I was doing before, but this is just an example. So I'm going to go to this column. I'm going to go to Edit Cells, and I'm going to go to Join Multi-Valued Cells. I actually do, in this case, I do want to separate my values with a comma, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that comma and that space. You can delete the space if you're going to use this in a CSV file or some other format. Go ahead and leave it and press OK. And what that will do is join all the multi-valued cells in my entire 4,700 records data set. And you'll see in record 2 now that all information is just in one row, one cell. So those are just some of the basic functionalities for organizing data in OpenRefine. What I'm going to move on to now is actually 2 of the most powerful refining functions in OpenRefine: faceting and clustering. So first I'm going to take a look at faceting. What I noticed when I was looking through my data set is that I have this publication place column right here. For just looking at this, I see that, I've got London, San Francisco, but if I look a little closer, I would see that I have a lot of values that might be misspelled, might be alternative representations of the same thing. I might want to change these values in some way so that I can work with the data more. So I'm going to go to the column menu, facet, and I know that all of the values here are actually text. So I'm going to go to text facet. What will show up on the left now is a list of every single value that I have in that column for publication place. I can sort them by name, or I can sort them by count. And I see, it's exactly as I expected. London, New York, Cambridge, and Oxford are the most popular, of course. But the more that I go down, the more that I see there might be some spelling mistakes, or there might be some instances like this: Bloomington, Indiana. I'm interested in this because Indiana is not spelled out right. It's just the state code. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Bloomington, Indiana, so I can see all 11 instances, all 11 matching records. And I decide from looking at it that, yeah, I do actually want to spell out Indiana. So I click it and spell out Indiana here. Now, when I click apply, what you'll see is that it will apply it not just to one cell, but to all 11 cells. And here we go. I'm going to go ahead and click out of this facet because I wanted to show you one more faceting option. And you'll notice that once I click out of the facet, it will go back to my full record view, all 4,700. That's how to do a text facet, but there's also a way to look at numeric facets. Right next to my publication place column, I have my DC terms issued column, which is my publication date or my creation date. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the menu for that column now. Go to facet and numeric facet this time, because I think that all of the values in this column are or should be numbers. What it will give me right here on the left is a timeline view. What I'm really interested in is this right here. It looks like there are 4 things that are non-numeric in some way. So I'm going to click off these checkboxes. And I'm going to look at just the 4 matching records that are non-numeric in some way. And I see it's because, for the most part, or every single instance, that there's a hyphen afterwards, which probably indicates something really important. But I'm not interested in that right now. I just want numbers in this column for some reason. So what I can do is go into the cell and click Edit. What I'd like to do now is just delete that hyphen. I can apply it to just this individual, or I can apply it to all identical cells, which is really what I want, because I want to do as many mass edits as possible, because I have over 4,700. When I do that, it's mass edited 2 cells in my column. So down, both 2015 are now without hyphens. So I'll go ahead and click out of that facet now and return to my whole record view. So those are just some of the things you can do with facets in OpenRefine. there are actually a lot of other options with facets that I encourage you to explore. The timeline and scatter plot facets, if you have a very large data set, can take a while to load, but they're really interesting and they reveal interesting patterns in the data. There are also a number of customized facets that you can read a little bit more about on the OpenRefine documentation page on their GitHub site. But for right now, I would love to look at clustering with you before we're out of time together. Clustering is how to take refining to the next level in OpenRefine. It's kind of the highest level of refining before you get into more complicated extensions and functions. So what I'll be doing now is actually looking at publication place again, because when I was going through the facets, I noticed that there are a lot of things that I was missing. When I'm just looking at a long list like that, there are things that my naked eye is going to miss, but maybe the machine algorithms and clustering will not miss. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this column menu. I'm going to go to Edit Cells, and I'm going to click Cluster and Edit. And this pop-up is going to come up. And what it's going to tell me is that the Cluster and Edit feature will help you find different cell values that may be alternative representations of the same thing. And it will give you a lot of different methods and keying functions to identify those things based on the algorithms that OpenRefine has running behind this function. So for instance, in key collision in the keying function fingerprint, what it's identified is that St. Albans and St. Albans might be the same thing, but all that's different about them is a little bit of punctuation. I know that I actually want a little bit of punctuation in my St. Albans, but if I'm not sure, what I can actually do to make sure that this is the same value is browse this cluster. Now, I'm not going to do this right now because it will take a while to load, but what I do is open up in a new tab these 3 rows, or however many rows have these values in them, and allow you to compare the records, compare the rows, and confirm that what you're looking at is actually the same value. So for right now, I'm just going to click St. Albans. When I click this, it will automatically populate the new cell here, and it will automatically checkbox merge. You can do that manually if you wish. You can actually the cell value and put in something else that you want. Maybe actually what you want is this. What I know what I want is this. So I'm going to go ahead and recluster. And it's mass edited those 3 cells for me. Other keying functions for the key collision method of clustering as well. Fingerprint and n-gram fingerprint are just different variations of the same keying function, but metaphone and phonetic are actually clustering by what the machine sees as phonetic similarities. So if I try metaphone, I'll notice that I have a lot more options here than I did. What it's recognized is that Newcastle upon Tyne and these other 2 values are actually the same thing based on some sort of phonetic analysis. So if I checkbox this, these 39 rows will now match these 2 other rows. It will also give you things that are definitely not true, so you might want to always take a look at these options before you click select all and then merge and recluster. For instance, Munich and Monaco are probably different values. It's just the phonetic analysis they're so similar that they wanted to give you that as an option. So I'm going to go ahead, and I know that this is true. I don't even have to browse the cluster to know that's true. So I'm going to go ahead and merge selected and recluster. Just to give you a glimpse at this one right here, you'll notice that this is even more serious than the other keying functions. Under key collision, Boston and Pasadena are definitely not the same thing, but they sound kind of similar. Walton and Wellington might very well be the same thing. It might be a spelling mistake, but it's probably not. So we'd probably browse this cluster. But for now, we'll just leave that alone. And I wanted to show you one more method which was the nearest neighbor method. Now, nearest neighbor is a clustering technique that's based on popular distance functions like Levenstein and ppm. This is how many of the characters in the word are different. That's what this analysis is. And you'll see that I have a lot of the same options here, but it's not always the same options. But for now, I'm actually just going to go ahead and close because I don't think anything needs to be changed. So let's pretend that I have edited, analyzed, organized, and done everything that I wanted to do to ready to export. I mentioned earlier that this project that I'm working on, I'm not going to export as RDF at this time. I'm actually going to export it as a spreadsheet, maybe so that I can look at the ways in which DC, the Dublin core terms, are used in this data set. So I really wanted a spreadsheet of some form. So if I click on this export function right here, I have a few options. I can export as Excel, as an ODS spreadsheet, but really what I want is a CSV file. I want a comma-separated value so that I can load it into all kinds of different software. One of the really interesting things that OpenRefine lets you do is you can export this as a compressed project and email it to a colleague if you want them to review your work, if you want them to find things that you may have missed, and etc. But for right now, I'm just going to export as comma-separated value. It will open up a tab and go to your downloads folder. And if you open it, it will look a little something like this. So that is all that I have for our basic walkthrough today. I am very happy to answer OpenRefine questions on Twitter, via email, or the TXDHC site. This is just some basic functionality, but if you ever want to have a chat about facets or you want me to direct you to some of the excellent documentation or other tutorials that are online, I would be very happy to do that. I'll be available in the chat box during the next session of this presentation for any follow-up questions as well. And I hope this was helpful.
Liz in Roswell.
And I'll hand it off to Jennifer now. Jen, I'm going to go ahead and pass you the presenter role again.
Great. Everybody hear me now? Can you hear me, Liz?
I can hear you.
Great. All right, so that was fantastic. And now that you're all excited about what you can do with Refine, I'm going to just real quickly run through some of the more advanced functions. And then we'll have some Q&A here at the end. So here's one of the things that you can use to take it. Oh,
Jennifer, sorry to interrupt. We can't see you yet.
We can't
see your screen yet.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It says I'm still waiting for you to. There we go. I think we're good now.
Okay, how's that?
That looks great. How does it look to everyone else? It looks great to me.
Yay.
Oh, viewer 40, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great. The next, if you want to take it to the next level, like I was saying, here's one thing that you can work with, regular expressions. Also known as wild cards on steroids. And you can more finely filter and manipulate your data by using this method, along with GREL, which is short for OpenRefine Expression Language, although you can see the naming change there has taken a toll on the acronym. But this is kind of like building a formula in Excel, but using those regular expressions, and OpenRefine makes it really easy to do this. And then you can go even further by using various of the community developed extensions. And they can help you easily, you can easily select and install them from the GitHub site. And they can help you retrieve data from online sources such as VIAF, data to external sources such as all kinds of other controlled vocabulary sources and linked data sources also that you might want to use. And there are also reconciliation services that help you use external data to normalize your data set. And then another thing you can do is using the cross function to compare the contents of two separate Refine projects or to share data between two projects. And that can be really useful if you're comparing, if you have a need to compare. So those are just a few things that you could, the paths that you could follow if you needed to do more work. And here are some resources. Again, these slides will be on our website so that you can use this stuff. But there's a number of resources that are on the GitHub site, including the user documentation and the forum and whatnot. I also would highly recommend freeyourmetadata.org. It's a wonderful website. A couple of Belgian dudes have made it really easy for scholars and librarians and archivists, people in this humanities realm, to get their feet wet with OpenRefine, and they walk you through it real well. They also have a wonderful book that they just put out that I also recommend. And like I said, there are a million other resources out there. There are other recorded webinars and tutorials, both text tutorials and also videos, of course. And that's about it for us. If we're going to have some time for Q&A, so please go ahead and enter your questions in the chat box. If you have stuff that you want to ask us separately or something comes up later, you're welcome to email either of us. And we would, again, encourage you very much to take our little survey. It's very, very short, I promise. So if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot them to us.
If we don't have any questions, we might end a little bit early. I could try to work with the data set that I have and show you guys some more things with faceting and clustering, or different ways to export data. Those are all things. Click around and then email or tweet us any questions later. And again, I'll reiterate what Jennifer said. That survey, I promise, is very, very short, and it's very well put together by Jennifer. And we'd love to hear what you thought. Complain about the issues, please. This is all going towards our next webcast training session for TXDHC. Oh, and it looks like I do have a question. How were you deciding to organize the data? Really interesting question. I mostly use OpenRefine to work with RDF, actually, for the Advanced Research Consortium, Connect. And what I try to do is know why I'm organizing it, where I'm getting it from, if I'm trying to, or if I'm trying to convert it to something else, or put it in a format that is easier for me to crosswalk to another metadata schema. So what I was kind of to give a little test run of is how the decisions you make before you start working with the data really allow you to make decisions on what functions you want to use, if that makes sense. Let me know if that answered your question or not. I'd love to answer a follow-up question. That's another really great question. And Jennifer, I'm not sure if you you wanted to tackle this one and then I can jump in, but viewer 36 asks if how might people imagine using this in the classroom or with students?
You know, I personally don't do a lot of classroom instruction, so I'm not sure I'm the right person to speak to that. But I could see if you were looking at a large amount of data that it would be useful as a way to visualize it and discuss issues with it. What do you think, Liz?
I think that's great. I'm also not in the classroom a whole lot either, but I have been in a couple of workshops and tutorials on this tool actually, and I found myself in the workshops with not just librarians and staff members and DHers, but also with graduate students and undergraduate students. And I think that as a lesson, the OpenRefine can be used to reveal the messiness behind the everyday data that we see, if that makes sense. So you know what you're really looking at when you search on, you know, London in a database, and it might be misspelled. You might not get everything that you want to get. That's one I think of it. If anyone has another idea, I think that would be an excellent discussion to have, maybe on the TXDHC website, in the group forums, or maybe right here.
Yeah, and Noel here is saying here at UT Austin he uses it with students and large data sets in a visualization course. So yeah, that would be a really interesting. Maybe that's another training we could have, and have people talk about how they use OpenRefine. And I want to not miss this question as this chat window scrolls by. Viewer 44 asked about using Refine to map locations from data sets and geocoding. And I haven't actually used Refine for that. I've used Google Fusion tables for sure, which provides that capability. And that's the primary thing I've used it for is mapping location data.
And there's actually a way to link up Google mapping tools and OpenRefine. There's an extension out there. If anyone's interested, you know, tweet or email me afterwards, and I'll send you the information that I have on that. I haven't personally used geolocation services with OpenRefine either, but I know a lot of people do. So there's a lot of information out there, and I'm happy to point you at some of it if you're interested in doing that. And I think...
Yeah, so there's a question about how well this scales with a very large data set, and I'm not recalling off the top of my head how you do it, but I know you can reallocate more memory to Refine, and that could be one way to troubleshoot that.
Yeah, I will say that the makers OpenRefine and the makers of Google Refine, they have said that this is geared towards smaller data sets, maybe not hundreds of thousands, but 100,000 would probably load really well. I've loaded, I think I've loaded at the most about 150,000 records, which means that there were even more rows to work with. Without any crashing, it scaled really well. But as Jen mentioned, there is an option for I guess, reallocating memory on your hard drive for OpenRefine so that you can work with larger data sets.
So we've got another question about creating scripts and macros to deal with like continuous receipt of streaming data. I guess if your data is changing frequently, and I do not know the first thing about that. Does anybody else have any idea?
Yeah.
Liz, you know?
That is a really great question, and I've actually never been asked that question about Google Refine before, and I can't believe I've never been asked that question before. I'm sure there's out there, because the great thing about this tool is that it has kind of a community of people writing, you know, we call them extensions, but really plugins. Right. So I'm sure there's someone out there that's done that, and I just unfortunately can't. I don't recall anyone I know doing that. Sorry about that. I think there was another question though, and I'll go ahead and read it.
Yeah.
Let me know if I'm question, but wondering if this links to other Google products like Fusion Tables. And actually, yes, it does. You can actually upload Google Spreadsheets and Fusion Tables directly into OpenRefine. You just have to authenticate it with your Google account. It's actually in that first dashboard option when you first load OpenRefine. It is, I believe. Let me just make sure. I'm going to go to it and make sure. In the in the Create Projects tab on that beginning dashboard, you can get data from a Google table. You can just paste in the URL and sign in and authorize that Google data. Upload.
I believe it also has to be a public data set. Is that right? Or the access has to be made public?
Yeah, that is true. It does have to be public for it to. Okay, so if you're working with proprietary data, that might be an issue.
But you can download it and re-upload it.
Totally. These are all really great questions. Thank you, guys.
Do you want me to hand you back presenter so that you can show that?
Oh yeah, that would be great. I would love to. I don't actually have a Fusion table or a Google spreadsheet to link to, but I can at least show what it looks like. Here we go. Can Jen, can you
yeah.
see my screen? Okay, great. Yeah. So when you open the dashboard in Google Refine, what you see first is this screen right here, which is just how to open your existing projects. But you can go to Create Projects, and instead of getting data from your computer or a web address or pasting it from a clipboard, you can just connect to a Google spreadsheet or Fusion table by its URL, and then you can click right here to sign in and authorize. So there's just a little work through. There are a lot of other Google Refine extensions too, and I know that you can connect to other public documents. I don't have a list of what those extensions are, but you can find them on the GitHub page for Google Refine. Oh, Neil just pasted that wiki for extensions. Thank you, Neil. So Neil, I'm very grateful to get you started.
So anybody else have any questions? Anything else you would like to see? Everybody hungry for lunch?
Aw, thank you for the applause gift.
Well, thank y'all. Thanks for tuning in. And again, we really will value your input so that we can make the next one of these better. So please drop us a line, check us out on the survey or email us. And we hope you have a lovely rest of your Thursday.
Yeah, everyone, this was a fantastic experience. I'm glad I got to kick off the training sessions for TXDHC with Jen. OpenRefine things at any time. And I'll stay on. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Liz. You're fantastic.
Thank you, Jennifer. You're fantastic.